You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. So welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. This is Coach D. I'm here with Coach Trent this morning.
Good morning.
And we are right in the middle of COVID-19, as everyone knows, quarantining our fitness and quarantining everything else. I think I've quarantined myself from myself. But today we're going to do a real quick podcast. And I feel like we're in Groundhog Day. Everything remains the same every day, except for our fitness, because it's either going up or down. It never stays the same. Yeah.
So before we get into this episode, I wanted to bring up someone that has recently passed away. He's a fellow starting strength coach, a fellow fitness enthusiast, and sadly, I only got a chance to meet the guy once, but we had him here on our show a couple years ago, and that's Peter Nathan. He passed away recently from cancer at the age of, he was in his 60s, I believe. Do you know?
Yeah, I think he was around, I think he was in his mid-60s.
Mid-60s?
Yeah.
What I know of Peter and what I know of just that short time that I met him and knew him was that he embodies what we're going to talk about in this episode in playing the long game and having a really broad set of skills and experiences and a really broad and open-minded perspective of fitness. And here's a guy who's a starting strength coach, absolutely believed in barbells. He was also a very, very good CrossFitter.
He went to the games.
Went to the games as a master's CrossFitter. So
World Games.
A guy that really had a broad perspective on fitness and health, and I think he played the long game in his own life. So,
well, here's a guy that we have a social media utility that we talk to other strength coaches on. It's called Slack, and I mean a lot of people use Slack, but we use it to talk to strength coaches and. Here we were talking about Peter the other day. When we did our podcast, I got to know him a little bit, and then we talked offline quite a bit after that, and we would share client information, and he's just a great guy. But here's a guy that was a modern dancer, professional dancer. He had an exercise science, exercise physiology degree. I think he had a master's degree. Was a lifelong fitness advocate, was a world-class CrossFit competitor, owned a CrossFit gym, I believe. Then also was a world-class Olympic weightlifter, won the world as a masters in Olympic weightlifting, was crazy strong. He had the coolest gym in New York where he lived. He had the coolest gym in a garage that was nothing but old fitness equipment collected, and he had all these clubs and
like Indian
other
clubs.
Things. It's just incredible, and it spoke to him a lot about him. He and his wife loved to dance. They did partner dance, kind of like swing dancing. But Peter was a really cool guy. He would wear a little English derby or a little Irish derby. I think he was
very
Irish.
Stylish dude.
Yeah, he's very stylish. Definitely a Renaissance man. Well read, well learned. But, that's a great example of someone who has lived the long game. Unfortunately, Peter got cancer, like Trent was saying, and passed away at a much too young of age. That's something no one can predict. But what you can say about his time between the dash is that he lived life to the fullest and that he had definitely the long game in mind. So hats off to you, Rip, Peter Nathan. We're going to miss you. And let's talk a little bit about the long game and how you can live your life more effectively.
Yeah, and you can go back and listen to the interview that Darren did with Peter. Gosh, this is all the way back. This is episode 11.
Yeah, it was early.
Very early on. So this is in, I think, July of 2018. So Darren spent an hour just chatting with Peter about his athletic career and kind of his own, the way that he approached fitness.
Yeah.
So rest in peace, Peter. And hey, let's talk about this long game to fitness.
Let's get it. Today, I want to talk about the long game. I want to talk about developing a sustainable fitness program and why it's important, not only for today and the quality of life today that you have, but more importantly, looking to the future, looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future. And I'm going to make some statements this morning. I'll be careful to do so that I don't offend anyone. because I want to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from and why I think 40 Fit Radio, or why I think the model that we've developed for fitness makes sense. Because I'll put this in one general statement. I think that your lifestyle program is more important than one mode of fitness, than one discipline of fitness. For example, barbell training, CrossFit, Olympic lifting, running, yoga, whatever it is. If your fitness model is so narrow-minded that that's all you do, I think your fitness programming is lopsided. It is not well balanced. And that's one of the things that we've talked about over the last, going on 2 years now as we've had this podcast rocking and rolling, and that is that your fitness is bigger. Fitness is bigger than starting strength. Fitness is bigger than CrossFit. Fitness is bigger than yoga. Fitness is bigger than the running community. Fitness is bigger than bodybuilding, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your lifestyle fitness and your health factors long term, it's bigger than just your diet or your nutrition. Your fitness program should be a well-balanced lifestyle program.
And I think a lot of people are starting to maybe recognize that if they have a very one-dimensional fitness outlook in this time, because a lot of people that were barbell training only, all I do is barbell train, squat, press, deadlift, bench.
Right.
That now they can't do that because their gym is closed.
Right.
And they don't have equipment. Nobody can buy equipment right now. Then you're like, well, what do I have?
Yeah.
What else do I have?
Sure.
There is more to physical fitness, performance, training, exercise than just barbells. Even though, two things can be true. Barbells can be the most effective and efficient form of training, and also not be the end all be all of training.
Yeah. Well, and I think what all this whole situation that we've got with this virus and this pandemic is what it's doing is, I hope what it's doing with you guys and our listening audience out there is helping you develop a sense of self-governance and self of independence. You need to have enough intellectual property in your brain to where you can train yourself if the opportunity arises,
Right.
It also means that as coaches that we need to be more well-rounded than just one mode of exercise or training. We need to have a background with I used to always call it a bag of tricks or a bag of skill set. You've got, like the doctor would go in when the doctor used to go from town to town, the circuit, the doctor that would travel, he or she would have a bag with them, a medical bag, and they would have different things that they could employ or use, different tools or skills or whatever, different medicines. And we should have the same as coaches. We should have a well-rounded skill set and knowledge base so that we can help our membership or our trainees during a time like this. And then it requires trainees. It requires you guys to then try those new things and to do those new things. If all you know is barbell training, or if all you know is something, when you think about it, I guess CrossFit kind of is the utilitarian type of fitness programming. That's what drew me to it so strongly. The problem was that it became unbalanced in how it was being taught and coached and how people were pursuing it. It became more of a competition for the average everyday Joe. He would go in and compete in his CrossFit workout. And then you start getting unbalanced again because you stop making the focus of your programming, talking about the long game, you stop making the focus of your programming a general sense of wellness, strength, flexibility, mobility, all the 10 general physical skills,
right,
and a good utilitarianism. And now you want to win the next workout,
right?
You know, and so that gets you off balance in your programming. So I think we're seeing right now with this virus, So I'm going to throw something out there that's totally not non-scientifically backed at this point, but in my brain, my science brain, my human biology brain says that this is probably the case, that there's probably there's three things that are affecting the death rate and affecting the morbidity rates that we're seeing in certain populations. Number one would be age. Just plain and simple, the age of the organism that it's attacking. Because older folks, older people, as we age, all of our body systems decline over time. It's just the way it is. Sure, there are some 80-year-olds that are healthier than others, but age is one factor.
Right.
The second factor has got to be genetics. Because, and I don't mean other comorbidity problems like other medical problems. I mean just the genetic makeup of individuals, because it appears that this virus has a certain protein marker or something that appears to attack one person completely different than it does another person.
Right.
So I don't know if there's something genetically, if there's something in our DNA, if there's something in, a protein marker, an antigen antibody type setting. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the people that aren't getting it, air quotes, have already had it. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
And they test positive because they had it in the past, and we just don't know that yet, And so
I think that's kind of what the serum studies that they're doing right now are, right? So if I understand correctly, what I've heard is that basically they want to try to develop some antibody tests to see how many people have natural immunity.
Right.
Or, well, maybe not natural immunity, but that they have immunity.
Some type of herd immunity.
Either because they've already had it or
got exposed to it or whatever, and they didn't have symptoms potentially. I mean,
but it is interesting how bifurcated the symptoms seem to be, because we talked about last episode how there are some people that have only the anosmia, just kind of the loss of smell, but no other symptoms.
Right.
Some that don't even really have that.
Right. And some people have full-blown respiratory failure.
That's right. And some people go to pneumonia and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
There's a guy on TV, George Stephanopoulos. I don't follow him or anything, but I saw on the news that he got it. He had no symptoms. He was totally asymptomatic. His wife got it and was, had some breathing difficulty. Didn't have to go to the hospital. They were able to give her, I think, steroids and inhaler and other thing at home, but totally different symptom presentation. So there's got to be something genetically in the way our bodies respond, because they had a very similar health status too. Their health factors were very similar. They had a very similar lifestyle. They had the same diet. They had the same general exercise regime. And so, there's got to be something genetically. But the last thing is that, guys, what this should really tell you is that your health status matters, is that your long game matters. How you are positioning yourself today. Let me give you an example. If you're 35 years old, you're 30 years old, how you are positioning and posturing yourself today and the actions that you're taking today matter for how you're going to retire in the future. Now, I don't mean just financially. I mean the quality of life that you have.
Right.
I can't tell you how many patients I treat day in, day out that are in their 50s and 60s, and I'm just blown away by the lack of quality of life, the lack of health that they have. I've got, 55 and 60 and 65-year-olds that act like they're on their deathbed. And many of them are. Many of them have many other comorbidity factors, many other medical conditions that have declined their health. But what this really says to us is basically this, that, you might have some genetic problems. You might have something like type 1 diabetes, juvenile diabetes, which, to be honest with you, if you got it, you got it. You get it when you're a juvenile, when you're a kid, okay?
Right.
Adolescent. And you can't control the fact whether or not you got that or not. But you have to learn how to manage that diabetes throughout your life. Managing that diabetes throughout your life is key to your quality of life. But there are many other conditions that are lifestyle-induced conditions. And maybe you have a genetic predisposition to those, but conditions like hypertension and hypercholesterol and cardiac disease and pulmonary problems, COPD, and some of these other conditions. Some of them have a strong genetic predisposition, and some of them are lifestyle induced. The quality of the food that you intake, your exercise activity, your lifestyle activity level, whether you live a sedentary life or an active life. And so what that really says to me is basically this, is that the long game is important here.
Right.
How you're going to live in the future, and more importantly, how you're going to fight something off is important. And that's not to shame those who have less quality health in their older years right now. I'm not saying, I'm not doing that to shame those. I'm talking to you guys out there that are in your 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and even older. And the decisions that you make every single day to posture and position yourself to be ready for the next attack, that's going to hit you, those decisions matter. So your diet and nutrition. And by the way, I want to put a plug out there. We don't advertise. We don't ever really promote anyone. I think the only person we've ever promoted we've promoted Rogue just by saying it's a great company and some other
we
things.
own like 95% of our gear is Rogue. I mean,
I came in this morning. I'm wearing a Rogue ball cap, and Trent's wearing a Rogue shirt. And we're sitting in a gym.
T-shirts are really good.
It's got a Rogue sticker, a Rogue fitness equipped gym sticker on front of it on the glass, and the rest of the gym is about 95% Rogue equipment.
Yeah.
But a great company, great American-based company. But I want to put a plug in there for this company. There's a company out of Dallas called Dallas Prep Kitchen, I think.
I've heard of this place.
Yeah, it's called Dallas Prep Kitchen. So I'm treating this guy at my clinic the other day, and he came to see me because I'm a starting strength coach, and he was referred by Brent Carter, starting strength coach and franchise owner in Dallas. And Brent sends me a bunch of folks, and so I was doing some rehab with him for low back pain. And we started talking. The guy has a master's degree in nutrition. And he said, hey, you need to try this because I know you live the lifestyle, you live healthy. And he said, I'm a consultant to this company out of Dallas, and he may be a partner, I don't know. But he said, it's all whole foods. We season it naturally. It's all very high quality protein, very high quality vegetables. And it can come in bulk, like little bulk sets. Like you can order 2 pounds of ground turkey, 2 pounds of ground beef, or 2 pounds of chicken, whatever. And then you can order nothing but asparagus. And so you can order, and then it all comes pre-cooked.
Okay.
So all you got to do when you get home is put it together in the meal that you want. Like last night, we had salmon. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was some of the best salmon I've ever had. And salmon, it's very important that you get salmon fresh, that you cool it correctly and store it correctly. And it's very important that you prep it and cook it correctly and ship it right, or it's fishy.
Yeah, right.
And this salmon was amazing. I ate 1.5 pieces. I bet I ate 10 ounces, 11 ounces of salmon. And then we had asparagus last night, and then we also had some rice, some brown rice, wild rice. But it was fantastic. But again, we're just talking about good quality stuff going in so that you got good quality stuff going out, so that your diet matters, your nutrition matters, folks. And I know we're preaching to the choir here, but I think so many times we get stuck on what I see humans do is they begin to go down the rabbit hole of this fitness trend or that fitness trend. And my big preach for the last 2 years of doing this almost 2 years of doing this podcast is having a long-term sustainable fitness model or programming and not falling prey to the local fad or trend.
And the key is sustainable.
Yes.
Because we're talking about the long game. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's having something, and I was even thinking as far when I was driving in to the gym this morning to do our studio here, I was thinking, that might mean sometimes that the next PR is really not as important as you think. Oh, I can't believe I said that with the barbell community.
Nope. But wait, are you saying that sometimes you're strong enough?
We've had this conversation I don't know how many times, and I hate saying that because I don't want that to be a cop-out. But, let's, okay, I'm 53 years old. I can squat over 400 fairly easy. I can deadlift over 500. I pressed, last night, working set PR, 185 for 5 sets of 3.
Nice.
On the press last night. Felt really good. I'm benching 5 sets of 3 at 185 right now. I'm about to hit 190.
Wait, you mean 285 or 285?
Oh, 285.
Yeah,
285.
You said bench press, right? 285.
Yeah, 285.
Okay,
and, there are other things, I can do or can't do. But how strong is strong enough? I'm reasonably strong for a guy my age.
Right.
And I'm not that genetically gifted, but is that enough strength?
Yeah.
Well, if I want to be a powerlifting competitor, maybe not. But for anything else in life, that's probably enough strength. And then the question begs is, can you be pushing the strength envelope, the endurance envelope, the whatever envelope, the flexibility envelope so hard as to get unbalanced in your body's mechanics, your presentation, your machine? You know what? You can make a car freaking fast. You can make a car have 1,000 horsepower. And you can also rip the transmission out if you're not important.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about cars, but those dragsters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they go insanely fast for what, 10 seconds, 8 seconds? I don't even know. But I mean, how much fuel do they burn in that process?
Oh,
and,
well,
you know,
I mean,
how much do they have to rebuild the engine after
nitrous
every
or jet fuel? Well, I mean, take a race car. As an
okay, yeah, like a stock car.
Race cars go through a set of tires, two sets of tires in a race.
Okay, right, yeah.
You know, they go through an engine. You know, I don't know how often it is, but you race car nuts out there would know all those stats. But what we're really saying is that parts wear out really, really fast.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're developing a sustainable long game program, you've got to be thinking about balance.
Right.
Balance is the key.
And I think so. I've struggled with this over the last 6 months because I've had a lot of different business things going on and a lot of work, and I'm just in a season of life where I'm just sort of building the vessel that's going to be my financial nest egg eventually, right? It's the generator, right? I'm building the factory that's going to provide for me financially. So that means that in my strength training, I get to this point, and I've gotten to it multiple times because I generally will have something that throws me off for a couple weeks and get back on. Yeah, life deloads, right? Yeah. I get to this point where I'm like, okay, I'm training 4 days a week with the barbell. I'm squatting 405 for a set of 3 or something like that. I'm pulling,
over 400.
Yeah, I pulled 475 for single. So I'm pulling in the low 400s for reps, all this stuff. And it's very draining. I find it very draining to continue to train like that and manage all the other things in my life too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, it in itself, am I strong? Not really. I mean, I'm very average when I look around at my cohorts. I have a lot of strength to gain.
Right.
From the standpoint of just programming and doing the strength training.
But you've also got the rest of your life to do.
But I also have the rest of my life. Well, and the other thing too is, like, at what point does pursuing a 500-pound squat take away from the other things I'm doing in my life? And I've also found in that process that from a fitness standpoint, I have ignored almost all other aspects of my fitness because I only have so much time for fitness in my life. And so I've been wondering a lot lately, where do I just draw the line and say, like, yeah, you know what, I'm strong enough right now. I'm going to go learn some other physical skills. I'm going to go do some other stuff, right? From a strictly logical improvement of the 10 general physical skills,
right.
I don't know if that's actually the most effective way to train. But I think that I have an intuition that that's going to play into the long game more. Maybe it's just a mental break.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. But I kind of have this sense that accumulating more physical skills ends up being better for you in the long run.
Yeah, I think I'll tell you what I've found both experientially, observationally, and scientifically.
Yeah.
Because those three things matter.
Sure.
From an experience standpoint, I have found that I am an all or nothing personality. If I'm going to do strength training, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to try to get as crazy freaking strong as possible.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do CrossFit, I'm going to go out. I'm going to get as crazy CrossFit whatever as possible. If I'm going to do an endurance event, I'm going to go all out. I'm trying to run the fastest 5K, the fastest 10K possible. I don't ever go above 10K, just racks my brains. I've run a half marathon just in training, just for fun. Not so fun. But I'm kind of an all or nothing personality, and here's what I've found. That's not sustainable. That's great when you're young, but as you age, you have to start thinking about the conservation, the utilization, and the conservation of resources.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, now what I'm not saying here, guys, and if you're listening to this podcast and you think we're bad-mouthing barbells, we're using barbells as an example because it's what we normally talk about on here is barbell training.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it pretty clearly.
It's about
80 to 90% of your training ought to be focused around the barbell.
Barbells.
When you look at the whole thing.
That's right.
But
that's right.
It's not everything.
Yeah. I probably think that, so to talk about balance is when you wake up in the morning, do your joints feel supple? Do they feel healthy? And do you feel reasonably strong to do anything that might come your way that day?
Yeah.
Do you feel enduring where you could run or sprint if needed, or go out and do a 5K if you wanted to? Is there a value there? Only if you need to do a 5K, or only if you want to have that fitness component. But I would argue with people and propose to people, we've talked about this ad nauseum. The number one of the 10 general physical skills, we know this with science and experiential and observational evidence. It is clearly strength. But strength for the acquisition of strength alone without the consideration of other factors, to me, is an imbalanced program. So I think it's important for something to be sustainable that we try to push the limits of your genetic envelope without breaking you and without bringing you to a point of a decline in your quality of life. Let me give you an example. If I am squatting 425 for sets of 5,
Yeah.
and I'm a male in my 50s, and I'm reasonably strong, and I can do everything else in life that I need to do, but I start to notice that my knees are hurting a little bit. I go with my coach, we check my form, everything's spot on, everything's good, my diet's good, everything's good. Everything that needs to be controlled is being controlled. Everything that needs to be managed is being managed. But now I'm noticing that my knees are hurting more, and this is becoming a trend. Could it be the acquisition of more strength is not necessarily the best thing, the best investment for my long-term health?
Right.
Could it be that my joint health, that my strength is now caught up with my joint health? And now at this point, trying to drive heavier and heavier and heavier loads, because I don't care what anybody tells you. I know the research has shown that loading the joints is important. It's good for cartilage. It's good for keeping cartilage from atrophying. It's good for joint lubrication, because the joint lubrication is kind of opposite of Newtonian physics. It thickens as we load it, as we use it. The synovial fluid does. And I get all those scientific things. But all of those things also have a turning point where the acquisition of more is not always better. More is not always better, you know?
Right.
And so if you can, you shouldn't always.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that there's a balance there. And I think that applies to strength training. This is a generalized principle. It's a first principle.
Right.
For something to be sustainable. To hold the long game, and to have the best quality of life the longest, and to look the best too in doing that. Number one, it should be sustainable. It should be balanced. More is not always better in the acquisition of the 10 general physical skills. People would say, oh, more strength is always better. Not if you can't walk very good. Not if your
Right.
knees are trashed.
Yeah.
You know, not if your shoulders are trashed. And there does come a point sometimes where whether it be yoga, flexibility, endurance training, strength training, any of these other things, you know, any of these other fitness vehicles or fitness modes, that you can go too far to one end of the spectrum or another. And I think the perfect balance is to have that sustainable long-term view and more of a utilitarian view where you're reasonably strong, reasonably enduring, reasonable sense of body composition in regards to body fat, lean mass, balance ratio, good quality nutrition and diet, using your body on a regular basis, and having a very active lifestyle, you know. And so there's a balance there.
Yeah. So there's I have another podcast that I edit. It's called You Need a Budget, and it's the company You Need a Budget.
My daughter listens to that podcast.
Okay,
and then
yeah.
she realized that you were the producer of that podcast.
Yeah, I mean, fairly recently. You know, I've done like 20 episodes with them, maybe. But yeah, so Jesse Meekum is the CEO of You Need a Budget, and he does this little podcast. And he's been talking about, in light of what's been going on recently, he's got a saying, "You've never budgeted like this," referring to YNAB. Well, his podcast last week with "You've never budgeted at a time like this," and the importance of continuing to budget because we don't know what's coming next. Economically,
Right,
financially.
Uncertain,
So continuing to stay in that mindset of budgeting and planning is very important. But then this last week, he talked about something I thought was really interesting, what they call rule number 0. Rule number 1 is give your dollars a job. budget, plan. That's rule number one.
Assign those funds to something.
But before that, even though it's not part of the official rules, they talk a lot about rule 0, which is, why are you budgeting? You have to answer that question. Mm-hmm. If you can't answer the question of why you're doing it in the first place, it's really hard to actually do it.
Right.
And I think that that's part of the long game, is you've got to come up with a reason for why do you want to be fit. And we've talked about before, aesthetic reasons are fine, but is that the only reason? You know, do you have a reason that's maybe, I want to be able to play with my grandkids? I want to be able to, when I'm going to be in a spot in 10 years where I can go buy some land and go live out there, and that's my goal. That's what I want to do with the rest of my life. Do you want to be able to go and, you know, cut down trees and haul hay, or, you know, whatever it is? I think you have to have a deeper motivation, and you have to examine what that is. And that helps drive the way that you approach fitness. Because if all you have is the logical sort of viewpoint without any sort of personal goal, then it drives you to sort of these silos of training, right? Logically, training with barbells makes the most sense for most of your training, right? Logically, then doing some high-intensity interval training of some kind to drive your cardiovascular function and your energy systems makes the most sense. But maybe from a total, your personal goal standpoint, that's not the best approach always to train like that. So yeah, it's kind of weird, because I think we have to reconcile that there is a goal that you have personally, and then there is the sort of the logical, scientific, most effective ways to train. And those are pretty well known, I think. And then you've got to meet the two in the middle.
And, you know, I used to tell people all the time, I would have patients and gym members in our gyms over the years ask me, hey, if I could buy one piece of equipment at home, if I could buy one piece of cardio equipment at home, what would you recommend? I said, well, tell me what you like to do best. I said, man, I like to run the best. I said, then a treadmill.
Yeah.
And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, because the best piece of equipment to have at home is the one that you're going to use.
Right.
Because 99% of the equipment that people buy, fitness equipment, it gets sold in a garage sale.
Yeah.
It never actually gets used. And so I think, and that's not to say that balance isn't important, because we've talked about that ad nauseum. I mean, balance is important. But at the same time, we want people to be active. And some people have a desire or a like of a certain type of fitness modality better than another. And so our goal is to help them find their balance. My goal with 40 Fit Radio and with 40 Fit in general is to, number one, give people the science, the logic, and the reason, and the experiential and observational evidence, and the discussion among our community that this might be the best path. None of us have figured this out. No one's figured this out. But we do know some of the factors that influence health and wellness long term. And so with the best knowledge that we have, we need to develop a long game, balanced fitness program. So what I want you guys to do today is to be thinking about that. I want you to sit down with a pad and a pencil or a pen and just be thinking about your programming now and ask yourself, am I adequately addressing strength in my program? Do I have a program that really addresses strength? And the only way to address strength is through loads.
Yeah.
I mean, you can use body weight, but it's only going to last for so long.
You need progressively heavier.
You need progressively heavier loads within reason for your strength foundation. Am I adequately addressing joint mobility and flexibility? And how much is needed there? You don't need to be doing the splits if you're a 55-year-old male. You know, it's great and cool and novel that you could do that thing. I mean, every year on my birthday, I do a standing back flip because of my gymnastics background. This year, turned 53, standing back flip. But that's not necessary for anything other than Instagram or Facebook or my own ego. You know, I mean, it's just novel. It's cool, but it's just novel. But what it does speak to the fact that for me in my mind, it speaks to the fact that I still have that fitness level to do that.
Right.
So it's kind of a marker. It's kind of a mile marker every year to be able to do that. But I guarantee you there's going to come a year where I'm not going to be able to do that anymore. And I have to be ready for that year with other capabilities or other capacities. And so also develop a program with reasonable endurance in it, with a reasonable amount of cardiovascular health and endurance in it. You don't have to go out and run a marathon to do that, though. Again, if that's your deal, then fine. But I think what I'm really talking about here is develop a balanced fitness program. Write down on a pad, what are you doing right now to impact these areas?
Right.
Strength, endurance, flexibility, mobility, accuracy, agility, coordination, balance, all these different 10 general physical skills. What are you doing in your program? And then you have to back all that up with lifestyle habits that we've talked about, like a quality nutrition, whole foods program, good vitamins and minerals, plenty of sleep and rest, and then going out and enjoying your fitness through quality lifestyle activities.
Yeah.
You know, getting out and using your body, getting some exposure to some UV, the sun, getting out there and using your organism, using your animal human, your human animal body out there in the creator's mix,
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Maybe the best way that I can put it is be a better human. And to do that, you actually have to go live. If all you ever did is train and you never actually used your fitness, I don't think you can be the best human you can be if that's all you ever do.
So I'm going to throw something out there, and I'm going to offend some folks with this, but it just is what it is. I love the internet. I think the interwebs and all that stuff and social media has brought a lot of good things to our society. I also think with every good comes a bad too. And I think there's a lot of bad things that have come with the internet and access to technology, online technology and all that stuff. And we could have a podcast, an entire podcast talking about that stuff. So I'm not going to argue with people about that. I'm just going to throw this out there. What I see happening with this virus and this quarantine is people quarantining their homes and living on the internet.
Yeah.
They're living on the internet.
Right.
They're Zooming on the internet. They're posting videos on the internet. Everything is on the internet, but they're still not actually living because they don't know how to live.
Right. Yeah.
Because they have nothing outside of their work and their internet. Or their social media life or whatever it is. And so what happens is they go home and they're bored because they have no other activities in their life. They have no other interest in their life. They have very few interest outside of their work and technology. And I love technology. I'm not bashing technology in itself. It's the usage of it, the way we use it.
Yeah.
But I see people that are just falling apart at home because they just don't know what to do. Go take a hoe out in the backyard, or go take an axe or something and chop down a tree or something. Use your body, So it just amazes me how many people they're so ill prepared.
Yeah. I think
they're so inept at doing anything other than using technology.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to the rule number 0 thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing the things you do? Why did you go to work in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you don't know why, then you don't know what you're just kind of going through the motions of life.
Yeah.
And this kind of stuff, when our whole schedule gets disrupted, this all comes to the forefront. Yeah. Like, all of a sudden you start maybe realizing or questioning these things that you may have never questioned before.
Yeah.
And it's vitally important because, like, is your whole point as a human to go and work?
Right.
To go do your job? Like, I think no. I think that we are given many different abilities and senses, and we have logic and reason. We also have intuition and emotion, right. And there's this huge range of things to experience in life. And to be an optimal human, you ought to experience them. Yeah. Most of them.
Yeah, I've always been the kind of person where I like learning new things. I like going out and doing new things, and I want to master them to some extent. I wouldn't say that I'm a master at any. There may be one or two things that I'm got better mastery at.
Sure.
Or that I'm good at, but I like being a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that part of my lifestyle.
Right.
I love
right.
the ability to. We said something. I said something on a podcast. I was on the Circle Dad's podcast recently with Brian Young, and I don't know if it's aired yet, but I said something in there about men. I said, you don't have to be a manly man. In other words, you don't have to be able to go out on a regular, but you don't have to go out on a regular basis and put a 60-pound pack and hike over the Rockies and do this and do that. But you know what? You ought to be able to have a little bit of self-preservation. If you as a man don't have some basic self-preservation skills, you are missing the mark, because that's part of you as a human.
Right.
Is to have some, and if you as a woman, the same thing. It's part of you as a human.
And even just
so live your life, man.
Experiencing that thing, right? Like going out, maybe you really don't have much of a desire or love of the outdoors.
Yeah. But
to have never experienced that ever in any capacity, I mean, you're missing like this huge earth that we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not, the internet is not real in that sense.
Yeah. Well, and exactly. What I see is a lot of people, they're living on the internet. No wonder they're so unhappy and they're so lost and bored in this time, and they're so inept at being able to handle it from an anxiety standpoint too, because they really have nothing outside of technology and outside of work.
Yeah,
and
right.
They have family life, but even that is not really very well developed, because when they come home and they get on their phones and they all go into their own little worlds again. They all go into their own little technology worlds again. One of the things Missy, my wife, harps about, and I do too to some extent, because we would like to have better Netflix or better Prime Video, but we have terrible internet out at the ranch. Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even watch a TV show because we get our internet over a satellite.
Okay.
And we use this one particular company, and they're terrible because we don't have landlines out there yet. But, it's gotten me to read more. It's gotten me to go out and do more projects. It makes me do some of the things that I should probably be doing anyway. And sometimes we need that.
Right.
And again, this speaks to more about the long game type mentality.
Yeah.
Thinking about your quality of life long term and where you're going to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years from now.
Right.
One of the things I want our listening audience to do is I want you to go back and listen to the first 10 podcasts that we did on the Foundation series, which talks about the sustainability of your fitness program. If you've come to our podcast later and you just started picking up podcasts along the way, go back and listen to podcasts 1 through 10 in order. Skip the new podcasts for now and listen to those older podcasts, and just listen to those first 10 podcasts where we talk about the 10 general physical skills. We talk about the sustainability of your programming. We talk about the foundations of a 40 Fit lifestyle. We talk about the things that we think are valuable variables to a healthy, long-term, long-game lifestyle. And then come back and listen to all the episodes in between. But I think we need to get back to the basics. What this event should be causing us to do is to get back to the basics of a long-term program. And let me give you one example of that mindset. I came in the gym last night. I'm by myself right now because we're quarantining. It's a terrible workout. I did PR my working set press, which was great, but I just did not feel. My joints are kind of stiff, a little achy. I just did not feel like training. I'm just, oh man. And I had to make some modifications in my programming because of that, go lighter on the squat and several things. But you know what? I just do the work.
Right.
I just came in and do the work. Because my mindset is not this. My mindset is not that particular workout at that particular space and time. My mindset is that is one of my workouts I'm supposed to get in this week.
Right.
For the remaining 2 or 3 other workouts that I have this week that fit into my weekly and then monthly program, that fit into my quarterly program, that fit into my biannual program, that fit into my annual fitness and health and wellness program. Backed up by the fact that when I left the gym, I went home and Missy had me wonderful salmon asparagus and rice and a glass of red wine. We need to finish off a bottle. Of course, it was purely therapeutic and medically prescribed. And so, and I had a little bit of red wine and a bunch of several glasses of water, but then back that up with good nutrition. So when I see my program, I don't see it as that one. I mean, yeah, you've got to keep in mind that you have to make sure that you get that one stressor, that one session in.
Right.
But the big picture is it's just part of my program.
Yeah.
It's part of my program. And if I miss a workout that week, I'm out at the ranch and I'm working or I'm doing something or working, one of my clinics gets really overwhelming, then I try to do something other physically to balance that out.
Right. It's
so it's having that long game in mind.
Yeah. And so it's avoiding this all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
And,
or I got to do this, or I got to do that. This trend or that trend.
Right. And it's also having a clear reason for your fitness. Like you want to be strong and you need to be strong so that you can go out and do the things you enjoy, which is being able to go to the ranch, being able to work with your cattle all day, being able to drag heavy equipment around.
Basically, just doing.
Yeah. And that takes a level of fitness, and that's why you train. And so, on those days when a PR is just not going to happen, that's okay because you have a clear reason. The reason wasn't PRing.
Right.
And I think if you get stuck in that mindset of like PRing is the only reason why I do this, it's going to break down eventually for you.
Well, I know in the barbell world, we talk about the PR, that everything's driven by the PR. And I think what I like to say is this, that everything's driven by goals.
Yeah.
Everything's driven by some sort of goal.
That's right. Yeah.
And you have micro goals that fit into your macro goal. So you have micro programming that fits into your macro programming. But, I like to see fruit on the trees where there's fruit on the trees. And when I look at any fitness industry today, I want to look at the person that's promoting what they're selling. And whether they're selling it for monetary reasons or whether they're selling it because it's their passion or whatever, those things matter. But I don't look at that as much as what is the product, what is the service, and how are they functioning?
Right.
You and I have talked about this. If there's some great experts in our field that are not really that healthy.
Yeah.
And so no names mentioned, but I think that, I want to look, is there fruit on that tree? Because I think that for us to be promoting a product, it needs to be something that we live.
Right.
That we've experienced. I think there's a lot of value in experiencing, because there's a lot of self-experimentation there, and there's a lot of self-exploration there over the years that I've done to try to figure out what works for me. Now, what works for me might not be exactly works for the next person, but there are some general guidelines I think that work for everyone.
Yeah.
And we've talked about those some in the foundation principles in our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
absolutely.
Man, guys, the long game's where it's at. So what I want you to do is, as you're thinking about all that's going on in your life right now, as you're thinking about, this pandemic that we have, number one, remember that this too shall pass, that this is merely a stitch in time. And you're going to look back on this, and this will be one of the events of your life, just like many of the events of your life. And some of you guys are old enough to recognize that and to keep the long game in mind, to keep the long-term perspective. But the number one thing I want you to do today is to sit back and get a pad and a pencil and pen or something and think about writing down what is the long game for you. How is your fitness program, or your lifestyle, health, and fitness program, how is that being architected and designed by your hands and the actions that you take on a day in, day out basis? Do you have a well-balanced program? Are you attacking the 10 general physical skills? Are you supporting that with good quality nutrition? And then are you also supporting that with lifestyle habits like sleep and rest and enjoying your fitness and getting out and using your bodies? And just put that down on, in writing, and then think about how you're going to be changing that and altering that. We promise to always bring you good quality information on our podcast, to make sure that it's well balanced, and to make sure that we know that, we're not perfect, and that there are some things that we recommend that we're going to change in the future based on science and evidence.
My own perspective on the sort of importance of things in training has changed since the beginning. I was much more all in on strength when we did those foundations episodes 2 years ago than I am now.
Yeah.
Strength is still
It's the bedrock.
The bedrock, but it's my thoughts have changed, and I'm sure they will ask me again in another 2 years. I'm sure I'll change again a little bit.
Ryan Young says it this way. My friend who has like we just said, the Circle of Dads podcast. He said, "You taught me a long time ago, Darren, that in every man's life we have seasons."
Yeah.
And one season you think everything is all this, and the next season you think everything is all that. Having a sustainable program and developing a successful quality of life over time in the limited amount of experience that I've had is all about balance.
Yeah. Allow yourself the possibility that there is something else that you're missing out there. Just the possibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Balance. Yeah. It's all about balance. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining the 40 Fit Radio podcast. And thanks for joining the 40 Fit Nation. If you want to check us out more, go to @40Fit Radio on Instagram. Trent's @Marmalade Cream. I'm @Dr. Deaton. You can email us, info@40fit.com. And you can also find us on the interwebs at 40fit.com. Or not but
www.
Yeah, 40fit.com. Man, have a great day. Be safe, be healthy. Let's get through this and think about the long game and everything you do. And have a great week. Bye-bye.